I will always tell couples, we're never going backwards. We're never going to get back to where you were. You don't want to go backwards. So it's, where do you want to be? You want to be minimally satisfied, content, happy, have an appreciation of being together, feel like you're a team and that you can rely on this other person. There's an 80-20 rule with couples that 80% of the time it should be good and happy and fit all those categories. And 20% of the time, yeah, it might be awkward, uncomfortable, difficult, conflict, but it shouldn't be higher than that. I have couples come in all the time. They're like, what's it, 50-50? I'm like, no, we wouldn't take 50-50 in business ever. Like 50%, we made 50% of our profit. That's not what we accept anywhere else. Or grades from kids. Oh, I earned a 50. That's not good. But couples will assume this is just part of being in a relationship, that it's hard and that's what you can expect. And I disagree fully. 80% of the time is where couples could aim for and then aim higher.
This is the Entrepreneurs United podcast with your hosts, John St. Pierre and Rich Hoffmann.
Hey, entrepreneurs and leaders. Today we're sitting down with Dr. Robin Buckley. She's a couples coach and has recently come out with a book in September, Rich, called Marriage Inc., which we're definitely going to have to jump into that some more. And previously a TEDx speaker up here in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Robin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you both for having me. I'm excited to talk with you.
Very excited to have this conversation with you here today. As I mentioned before we just hit record there, and you know this anyway, our audience are entrepreneurs and leaders within companies. I'm curious if you had one message to send entrepreneurs and leaders of companies regarding your topic of expertise, what would that message be?
Stop trying to reinvent the wheel. Use your skills that you do so well at work and apply it at home. That would be it.
What are the skills that you're thinking of when you say that? Use the skills you use at work, apply them at home.
Yeah, what's amazing to me is that leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, they think that when they get home, they leave all of their negotiation out the window. They stop really doing very good work with conflict management. They don't apply the things that do work in their businesses. So whether it's assigning tasks and chores, whether it's creating an agenda for meetings, whether it's scheduling meetings, all of those work for them in their businesses. And yet they come through the front door and they just hope and pray their relationship works. And they would never, ever rely on hopes and prayers for their businesses. They would have structure. They would have plans. They would have strategy. And most of us don't do that in our relationships.
So what does that look like in practicality, to have a structure and a strategy? And like it has a feeling of being a little not warm or like the love. Let's have a for. So how does that work?
Yeah, let's start with love and sexual attraction are just the bells and whistles of a relationship. But if you don't have a foundation, those are going to fade, and they'll fade relatively quickly because there'll be conflict or there'll be disagreements or there'll just be tension. So having a structure is putting into place very concrete strategies that create the space to get things taken care of so the love and sex can really build. So, for example, when we look at this, Rich, let's start with something easy. So a lot of couples come to me and there is tension or resentment because one feels they're doing all the work and the other isn't doing enough. And I'll ask them, okay, so when did you sit down and actually assign the chores and the tasks in your house? And they're like, no, they should just know when things need to get done. I'm like, really? In your business, do you just hope that people can read your mind and things will be taken care of? And of course they don't. They're like, no, I tell them what I need done, what I want done. Everybody has a role on the team. Well, your relationship at home is a team. It's a partnership. If you want things done, it's sitting down and saying, okay, this week, I know we both hate doing the cat litter, but I'm going to take it this week. You're going to take it next week. And I really love landscaping. That's something I'm good at. So I'll take care of all the stuff on the outside. You have conversations around what are your strengths? What are your preferences? And you negotiate just like you would at business. And that's just the start. That's the simplest way. When couples come to me and they're really hitting an inability to communicate, we start there because that's easy. And if they can't negotiate around that, that usually indicates a bigger problem. From there, we build a structure around having meetings. And there's 4 types of meetings. We have daily meetings for connection. We have weekly meetings for logistics. We have monthly meetings for overall evaluations. And I encourage couples to use a SWOT analysis, like in business. And then they have their quarterly meetings where they talk about their vision, because those meetings work in professional lives. Why wouldn't they also afford the same benefits in our relationships? And then to address what you said, Rich, then there's space and time and room for love and emotion and connection to really build, because you've taken care of all the other stuff. You've gotten it out of the way so that it doesn't become problems and obstacles in the emotional part of your relationship.
You gave one symptom that someone may come in with as resentment over one person doing all the work. What would be the top 4 or 5, or if you have a top 10, what are the top symptoms that you often hear as to why someone works with you? What are they presenting?
Yeah. So miscommunication or lack of communication, lack of or no sex and in their relationship, lack of intimacy, because people assume intimacy and sex are the same thing. They're not. There's 5 different types of intimacy. Parenting miscommunication or parenting style differences, finances, certainly to round off the top 5. And then overall, just not prioritizing the relationship, being too tired for connection. And connection isn't just, again, physical, it's talking in a way that goes beyond, how was your day? Fine. How was your day? Fine. That's not talking. That's not communication, and certainly not connection. So I'd say those are really the biggest ones I see walking through my door.
You'd said there were 4 different types of intimacy?
5.
5. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So there's physical intimacy, intellectual intimacy, emotional intimacy, spiritual intimacy, and experiential intimacy. And people don't realize that there's 5 different ways that you can really create connection. We hear intimacy in our society and we think of sex. And that's just that's within the physical intimacy, which also includes cuddling or back rubs or just sitting close to each other on the couch. And then the other 4 also can contribute to it. And when couples are having a hard time in the physical intimacy area, I'm like, okay, then let's pick one of the others to start to develop. So intellectual intimacy, identifying a podcast that you both will listen to, and then you can exchange ideas about podcasts, books, magazine articles, whatever. I try and encourage my couples not to talk about the news, because the news tends to be not as light and uplifting. So I encourage other areas. So that's intellectual intimacy. Emotional intimacy, that's vulnerability. It's sharing. It's in those 5 to 10 minute daily meetings. It isn't how was your day? It's tell me one thing that really lit you up today, that made you excited. Tell me one thing that was really hard, or sharing something that was really hard from the day. It's opening up. Experiential intimacy, it's doing things together, creating memories. You know what? Actually, my husband and I are doing that. We decided we wanted to really get back into dancing. So we're going to take salsa lessons, and we're both open to that. And that's going to build our experiential intimacy. And we'll decide if we like it or not, but we're just going to do it together, and we're going to laugh at how clumsy I am, for sure. There's spiritual intimacy. People make the mistake of thinking this is about religion. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. This is about the bigger perspective. What really connects you to like the greater world? So maybe it's a perspective or a value of kindness or generosity. Maybe you decide that once a quarter, you and your partner are going to go work at a soup kitchen. Or if you're in Portsmouth, work for Gather, one of my favorite organizations. So you're doing this together to enhance that the world is bigger than just the 2 of you. And then I forgot one, emotional, intellectual.
I think you hit them all. Like physical is on sexual. Emotional is typically on sharing. Intellectual is topic-based discussions.
Mhm.
Experiential is doing things together. And then you've got spiritual. What I took a note on was like a connection of values. And those values may have a religious connection, but they may just be values and you're connecting to the world.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay, great. I want to take a quick step back to where you started on the resentment over doing one person doing all the work. And you said, when did you decide who would do what work? And often people say, well, we didn't actually make a decision. So after they sort out the idea and do the draft pick in the negotiation of doing what happens when nobody likes vacuuming?
Yeah, that goes back to the cat litter example I gave, and that's from a real couple that I work with currently. Neither one wants to clean out the cat litter. It doesn't sound like a fun job to me either. So because neither one wants to do it, it's a negotiation around, okay, so do you take 1 month and I take the next month? Do we do it weekly? How do we make this happen? Because neither of us wants to do it, but it has to get done. Backing's the same thing. When we divide up chores and tasks, just like we do on teams at work, and people do the things that they've taken on or been assigned to, it builds trust. It also relieves some of that cognitive space from saying, is that going to get done? Is he or she going to get it accomplished? Do I have to do it? If it does happen, you're like, oh, okay, I can rely on that person to do that. And now the resentment goes down and there's more space for connection. There's more space for being together as a couple rather than this block between the two of you because you're just seething inside. So something as simple as assigning chores, and I want to clarify, this is not a dictator in the relationship saying, you're going to do all these things. It's a conversation. It's a negotiation. Because again, we know at work, that would not go over well if someone was just the tyrant telling everybody what to do.
Yeah, I love that. Rich, my answer would have been hire a cleaner.
Great answer, John. I like that much better.
That's the best answer because
Then
now
you
you're
may have
both
to get
getting
into
out
the
something you don't like
financial
to.
issues. That's a presenting symptom of hers. You might get into the financial issues at that point.
You could.
Potentially.
But I like that workaround.
But I'll tell you what, my wife and I have figured out, at least with what works with us, is when there's something that we both don't enjoy doing, we find an alternative to it. We're both not great cooks, so we go out to eat a lot. We don't like cleaning, so we hire a cleaner. And maybe we find other means to figure out how we're going to accomplish that and ways to do it. But I think that also helped maybe build our relationship. I think one of the areas, Robin, I'm struggling with personally is we've never really sat down and had to divvy up responsibilities. I'm trying to now go back and say why. Okay, it's been over 20 years now, so maybe I can't remember why. But I think a lot of that was feeding off of each other. And maybe that feeling of feeding off each other is what is important to me in a relationship, that if we can't feed off of each other and compensate for each other and help each other in different areas where we may not like to do things or weak to do things, then maybe it's not a great relationship to begin with. And so I'm struggling a little bit there with, shouldn't couples be able to do this naturally without having to sit down and having a business meeting?
Yeah, I get that a lot, John. Things are work. We've never had to have I just actually met with a group of women who had been married for 50 years or more. And I came into a group who were like, who is this woman coming and telling us how to run our marriages when we've been doing it fine? And what happened was, as I started asking them about their life stories, and everything they talked about were things from the book, just not in business terms. They've been doing the things, and that's great if it's intuitive. But 50% of people get divorced. So there's half the population that is not doing this intuitively. And what we do know about younger generations is that while they have lots of strengths that our older generations don't have, one of their challenges is around interpersonal communication. Social media, technology, COVID, whatever you want to blame it on. So for people who aren't able to be vulnerable, have that kind of communication, have that kind of interpersonal intuition, having a structure is really important. And unfortunately, you don't know if you're going to have that until you're in it, until you're in a committed relationship. And then I hope for one of those couples, for me, it's why rely on that? Why not just have it in place? Or if you're even couples who are just in a rut, they know they want to stay together, but they don't know how to get out of the rut. They don't know how to get to a place where it's satisfying and passionate. So having the strategy allows for that. John, that's awesome that you and your wife have been able to, and I love the word intuitively, figure this out. But if you ever do hit a slide, there's strategy. Yeah. Or the couples who never really had that creative approach or internal compass for a relationship, there's a strategy. Does that make sense?
It does. And what hit me right off the bat of this conversation is I had a pretty big failure a few years ago. And one of the things in the aftermath of the failure that I realized is I really didn't have a strategic life plan. I had a strategic business plan. Oh no, every year, every quarter, we get together and here's the 90-day goals and here's where the rocks and here's what we're gonna go do. And all the time. We'd go off site, actually. We'd go off site for a couple of days and come up with our rocks. I never brought myself off site and said, what are your goals, buddy? What are you trying to accomplish in life? I didn't have a life plan for myself. And that was one of the biggest things that I realized in that moment was like, I need a life plan for myself because if I don't have a life plan for myself, what I'm trying to accomplish, then what's this whole business thing all about? It wasn't aligned. And so now I have a life plan. So when I do business, it aligns to my life plan. Everything I do with my wife aligns to my life plan. Everything I do with my kids aligns to my life plan. Everything kind of has alignment. And I think what you shared right off the beginning is you need a plan. You need a plan of how this relationship is going to work. And that really connected with me. What does that look like for a marriage specifically? Is there a specific format? Is there a document? Is there like a strategic plan, like one pager, like I can do for my business? What does that look like?
Yeah, it can be any of that, John. And what I was about to ask you before you segued to the question was, do you and your wife have a mission statement and a vision statement?
No.
Most couples don't. They have a general idea of where they want to go. All right. So if you have one for your business and you have one for yourself, and I've heard that from some, not many couples, but then my question is, why don't you have it for your relationship? Where do the two of you want to get to together? Now, obviously, like you said, all of your individual life plans feed into your relationship with lots of different people. But what is the connecting mission statement and vision statement for you and your partner, you and your wife? And that's really important. So when couples will ask, how do we start? And that one, I actually don't have something set. I have a lot of other things. I have questions they can ask each other. Some I set off on if they like research. I'm like, go research your favorite companies and look at their mission and vision statements. Just read it and then start to ask yourself some of those questions. But it's knowing that the vision statement is where you want to get to. And the mission statement is the daily actions that get you closer to that vision. And how do you do that together? How do you make sure, and I'll throw myself under the bus. I spent money the other day on our younger daughter. She was depressed and sad and she had been broken up with. And so we went on a spending spree and I bought her a lot of clothes because that's my love. One of my love languages, definitely acts of gifts.
Robin, I think that's retail therapy, isn't it?
It was for her, and I will embrace that, Rich. But when I got home and my husband said, there was a lot of spending, I'm like, there was. And he said, that didn't really align with what we had agreed on for spending for this month. And I'm like, you are 100% right. I totally threw out our mission statement, which was that we're a partnership. And not that he would ever say no or correct me, but it's having the conversation so we stay on track because I went way off track. So that's what brings us back together. It wasn't him berating me. It wasn't him being disappointed in me. It wasn't me feeling guilty. It was, damn it, I really wasn't paying attention to that. I was so caught up in the mom mindset that I just acted. And okay, next month, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to remind myself. That's what having a mission and vision can do. And I love that.
Yeah. Rich, do you mind disconnecting? I'm going to bring my wife, Amy, down for the rest of the conversation because I think I benefit from some of this. I'm
not going to disconnect. I want to listen and learn. I'll just go on mute.
I'm just teasing. But one of the things that we've done, if I was to write a book about couples and marriage, the title of the book would be Saturday Night Date Night.
Yep.
That would be the title of our book. Since we got together as a couple pre-marriage, Saturday night was a sacred date night. When we had a kid that was newborn, a week old, Saturday night date night. It has not stopped forever. What's interesting for us is it's changed now because we now have become empty nesters this year.
Mm-hmm.
And now Saturday night date night seems to be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, any night we really want. And so it's like Christmas every day. And so what's really interesting to me, what you talked about was this experiential side of things where I feel like we need to get more adventurous maybe from that word. It's not just we're traveling somewhere. It's not just we're going to dinner, but I love the example you gave about dancing, like doing something completely different from what we've ever done to be able to laugh and enjoy something and converse. That's something that I think it really is connecting with me. Rich, what's one that would connect with you of something that you feel that you could benefit from just diving a little bit deeper into?
Of which issues? The presenting issues?
The intimacy ones, the 5 intimacy ones. I thought it was interesting because when I looked at all 5, I was like, yeah, that's one where I'm at the stage where we need more experiential.
I actually think Shelby and I are really good on experiential, and we protect that a bunch, and we always have. We've always had 3 or 4 trips that it's just been the 2 of us going out of town, even though when we had 4 kids in the household, we still protected that. We protect date nights. We're not a every Saturday like you and Amy are, but we protect date nights and we value that time. When we have an extra hour, we find an hour, we call it stolen moments, and we find an extra hour on how to spend the stolen moments together and enjoy it. So I feel like experiential, we're good. I feel like spiritual, we're not intentional about. We're not a go to church every week family. We're not a sit around and talk about that kind of stuff at dinner every night or every month or every year or maybe ever, occasionally, very rarely. But I think just the idea of the connection to values and how we want to operate with that, I think we could use a little bit of work there. The one that we do really well at is on the parenting side. We got super clear on what exactly are we raising with our 4 daughters. And it was 3 things: them having high self-esteem, them having clarity on who they are and independently discipline themselves in alignment with that clarity. And then the last one is speak their mind with respect. And we looked at those are the 3 things that we want in an 18-year-old female, because there are 4 girls. And we said, that's what we want. So we used those as touchstones for how we parented and how we disciplined in parenting, and how that's what we're trying to raise, is somebody that does that. So that's one on the spiritual side I think we nailed. But as we only have 1 kid in the household now and 3 are out, that's becoming less and less of our conversation. And I think there's something to do on the spiritual side that isn't around kids anymore.
And what's interesting, Rich, is as you were talking, my brain, because of the framework I created, automatically goes to how is that like business? So you both talked about experiential, and we know that in businesses, we have retreats or days of fun in the office to connect people on the same experience. We have team builders. Hopefully they're good team builders and people don't roll their eyes. When it comes to spiritual, people think that's so outside of the business world, but there's a set of values that most successful businesses operate from. And then as you were talking about your daughters, and I can resonate with that having 2, that it's what would a business leader want for their employees? What would he or she want to emphasize and bring out of their employees, which is exactly what you did as a parent, what you and your wife did as a parent. So many of these concepts that we use almost fluidly, at least in our conversation at home, are directly related to what we do at work. And for people who aren't doing that in their relationship, it's like, just do the things, just do the things, whether it's super specific, like agendas and assigning chores and meetings, or that overall idea of how do I enhance the environment? And intimacy might not be the word that business leaders will want to use, but it is similar.
I've got a question, Robin, and this is one of those, I want to open up one of the operating things my wife and I go by, and I'd love for you to tinker with it or validate it. So
Great.
perfectly fine if you don't agree with it for some reason. And we believe so deeply in it that anyone's wedding who we go to, we give them a photo box to put pictures in. And on the underside of the box, we engrave it that says happiness hierarchy. Number 1, yourself. Number 2, your relationship with each other. Number 3, the kids. Number 4, everything else. And what we have found in our relationship is when we disagree on things, it's usually because one of the 2 of us got that hierarchy wrong. We were not prioritizing ourselves enough, and one of us is run down so it doesn't show up in the way that we want it to. We misprioritized the kids and put the kids above our relationship. So that really got designed from the idea of we need to be healthy individuals first. Then we need to bring that to a healthy marriage second. Then from a healthy marriage, we need to then parent our children. And everything else comes after that. Sometimes, by the way, we'll misorder things in something else. It should have belonged in number 4. we accidentally put in number one. So
Mhm.
I want to just open myself up to go, is there a piece of that you would correct after hearing that?
I would love to, because I really love healthy debate, Rich, but I can't. That
Yeah.
makes complete sense. And I usually, because I get a lot of pushback, particularly from parents, and I will say, particularly more so from moms, but I always bring them back to, okay, but where did your relationship start? You weren't parents first. You weren't even a couple first. You were an individual first. And so you have to make sure that that's your foundation. You were an individual before anything else happened. So that has to be strong. Then you layered the couple onto it. Now that has to be strong. So you have to make sure those foundational elements are not only strong, but intact and maintained, because if those fall apart, the individual, the couple, whatever, everything else topples. When people get divorced because they haven't created a strategy or had an intentional relationship, everything that's on top of it, which is kids, families, external and internal stakeholders, everything else is affected. So I won't argue with you. I think that's lovely. And I really love that's your standard wedding present. And I might steal that. But starting with a healthy person first, that's why, John, I love that you have these life plans as an individual. It's important, because then it contributes to the couple, then it contributes to the family, and then it contributes to everything else. So that's really wonderful.
You had a bit of a sub bullets, obviously, with the 5 types of intimacy. What are the sub bullets you've got on lack of communication?
I don't know if I have sub bullets, Rich. So my background is in cognitive behavioral psychology. So I understand how the brain works, and it is training your brain to work for you rather than against you. And this is in business, this is in relationships. When people are not communicating, it is typically because their amygdala is driving the conversation. And the amygdala is that emotional, reactive, fight, flight, or freeze part of our brain. And that's where they're coming from. Instead of stepping back, allowing their sympathetic nervous system to calm down, and actually being able to have a logical conversation from their frontal lobe. And that's a lot of neuroscience mumbo jumbo, but it is 100% accurate. You can name any type of disagreement or miscommunication, and I can get you back to the amygdala. It's always the amygdala. And it always, and I can't say always for most things, it always sabotages communication. So helping leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, or couples learn to identify when the amygdala has taken over the conversation, and then very specifically employ strategies to get the frontal lobe back online and quiet the amygdala. Because if your audience doesn't know, the crazy part about those two parts of the brain is when the amygdala is engaged, it shuts down our strategic thinking. We actually can't think strategically when the amygdala is fully active. And thankfully, the opposite is true. When our frontal lobe is engaged, it quiets the amygdala and we're able to effectively communicate.
So my assumption is going to be the strategies to quiet the amygdala. Any strategy you come up with is going to be a form of including a pause,
I,
because without separating the reaction from the response, there's no control, because that's what we're getting in the amygdala is just a reaction. We're not getting a response, and we have to install a moment of pause in that.
Correct.
So what are some of the strategies to employ a moment of pause to be able to get the prefrontal cortex back online?
Yeah. So in business, I think we've all heard it. There'll be a meeting, it's starting to get agitated, and someone whose frontal lobe is working will say, you know what? Why don't we table that to the next meeting? That is basically saying the wheels are coming off the track and we need to all calm down. So in a relationship, I talk to couples about having a safe word, and everybody always thinks I'm speaking about the original safe word that most people associate with physical intimacy. And that's wonderful too. But this safe word is about how to create a pause. So what I tell couples is you're going to come up with one word or phrase that has a special meaning to each of you, to both of you. So it might be a memory, it might be something funny that happened to you. And the reason behind it isn't just because it's lovely and warm and fuzzy, but when we trigger a memory that you both, a shared memory, it actually reduces the cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and it engages oxytocin, which is the connection hormone. So even when you're still pissed off at each other, Just by saying the word that triggers a memory, you're already starting to connect more than conflict. But that word means everything stops. There's no one more thing or just wait, I got to say one more thing. Absolutely not. Everything stops. And if couples don't respect the safe word, then it loses its power. But that's the trigger that we are each going to go do our own thing. And I also encourage couples to create an SOP around that. What does that look like? Okay, so we're each going to go in a separate room. It's going to be 20 minutes, and then we're going to reconvene on the couch in the living room. It's specific. So it's just hanging out there. And this is not shoving things under the rug. It's allowing for that time to re-engage the logical part of the brain, calm the emotional part so that the conversation can be productive. So in my relationship, our safe word is seagull, because I really don't like birds and I really don't like seagulls. And when my husband was trying to propose to me, we were on York Beach in Maine, and we were sitting on chairs that were low to the ground, and this gigantic seagull decided to walk over and put himself right between us. And I couldn't even continue. My husband had to throw away all the proposal plans. We went to a new spot and it was lovely. So anytime we say seagull, we both, even if we're not laughing on the outside, we're laughing on the inside because we both remember it. We take our pause and then we reconvene according to our specific SOP around communication.
I love that. Rich, you and I used to have a record scratcher paradigm shift thing
We
as well. Do
did.
you remember what it was?
Yeah, we would roll the windows down in the car and we would scream, "I love life" at the top of our lungs.
Love that.
Robin, we've been on a lot of things we should be doing as couples and should be thinking about. You mentioned a couple of things earlier that we should not be doing. I wanted to highlight one of them as an example. My wife and I used to always watch 6:30 national news. We don't do that anymore. We stopped. It was very stressful for her in many different ways for bunch of different reasons. And it wasn't fruitful to the relationship. And there's more things like that. I'm sure politics has probably been a big topic over the last decade for couples in terms of different opinions, different thoughts, and different whatever. What would be like the top list of try and avoid these situations or try not to put yourselves in these positions?
So news and politics really are at the top of everything. Anything that engages in blame, definitely don't want to throw that out. Parenting styles, again, going back to that. So having a clear plan on when you're talking and whether it's children, whether it's elderly relatives you're taking care of. So again, those internal stakeholders, having a plan about how you handle when in the moment your partner says something, you're like, that is not what we never talked about that, but making sure that becomes an area for better communication rather than it absolutely just deteriorates the relationship or communication. And sex is actually a really big topic when it comes to that, and how to have what feels like what are safe conversations around that level of physicality so that both partners can be heard. Because when that becomes either a constant source of resentment or a source of silence because one or both has given up, that is a really significant issue.
So I guess I'm curious, what are symptoms or when should people seek education or assistance? What are some of the trigger moments where one or the other should be looking at, hey, we should maybe reach out for some assistance from someone like yourself or somebody else? And how do you overcome maybe the other person's anxiety over that topic? What do you mean we need help? Because I'm sure that happens as well, because it doesn't usually happen mutually together. Hey, we both at the same time are suggesting, well, let's get a couples coach. So what are some of the triggers and symptoms, and how should that conversation happen in the household?
Yeah, triggers, I would say it's for a lot of people, it's I can't remember when. Can't remember the last time we had sex. Can't remember the last time we actually had a conversation that didn't involve logistics, children, or otherwise. Can't remember the last time we laughed together. Can't remember the last time I felt comfortable with you. Can't remember the last time I really appreciated being in this relationship. If those are thoughts that come up, or I can't remember the last time I knew I wanted to stay 100% in this relationship, Those are good red flags. And the beauty of them is they're internal. You can evaluate sex as external, but it's also that internal, wait a minute, when was the last time any of those things? So it can start from an internal analysis. It doesn't have to be these really deep conversations, uncomfortable conversations. Sometimes it's, wait a minute, where are we? And that's what helps with those monthly and quarterly meetings, because you can ask those questions like, how are we doing when it comes to our intimacies? How are we doing financially? How are we doing with communication? It's not waiting until they become these large issues. And then 100%, it is, I'd say 90% of the couples I work with, one person is the initiator for reaching out for coaching. And it's uncomfortable. And even the other person, if they know they need it, it becomes, why? Why should we do that? Because it's a fear. If I admit things are not where we want it to be, does that mean it's over? And I get that. It's understandable. And so it's reminding people that you can be in a rut. You can be in a rut that's been a decade long, but you know that deep down you still want to be together. So now we get to fix it. This isn't about deciding. The first question I always ask couples I work with is, do you want to stay together? As long as both people say yes, we can work on it. There's ways to enhance the relationship to get it back to what, or not get it back, but to get it to where they want. Because I will always tell couples, we're never going backwards. We're never going to get back to where you were. You don't want to go backwards. So it's, where do you want to be? You want to be minimally satisfied, content, happy, have an appreciation of being together, feel like you're a team and that you can rely on this other person. There's an 80-20 rule with couples that 80% of the time it should be good and happy and fit all those categories. And 20% of the time, yeah, it might be awkward, uncomfortable, difficult, conflict, but it shouldn't be higher than that. I have couples come in all the time. They're like, what's it, 50-50? I'm like, no, we wouldn't take 50-50 in business ever. Like 50%, we made 50% of our profit. That's not what we accept anywhere else. Or grades from kids. Oh, I earned a 50. That's not good. But couples will assume this is just part of being in a relationship, that it's hard and that's what you can expect. And I disagree fully. 80% of the time is where couples could aim for and then aim higher.
Think about the return on investment,
Yeah.
right? So Rich and I do entrepreneurial coaching, and the ability for somebody to recognize, I want to optimize my business performance for max results. I'm going to go get a business coach who's going to optimize my performance. I'm going to get a strength coach who's going to optimize my strength performance. Imagine having a couples coach, Rich, right? Similar example, that can optimize your performance from 70% to 90% or 85% or whatever. Think about the ROI in your life and happiness, and then bring that to your company and how much you'll be a better leader in your business. It seems to me, Rich, that this just is part of an ROI similar to us doing business coaching.
I agree. I think there are different coaches that can fit different factors of life, and to have a coach on multiple of them seems to make sense. Question for you on this, Robin. You've got Marriage Inc. that came out just within the last 6 months, and I'm going to buy it, and I can't wait to see the concepts in it. Sorry to put you on the spot. Do you have a workbook?
I do.
You're awesome.
Yeah. So behind me are the books, because my business coach said you need to just display it all the time. I'm like, all right, fine. So the blue bigger one is the workbook, and it takes, in the book, there are examples, but the workbook compiles all the activities. Couples have really enjoyed it because it puts it all in one place and it gives them a little more of a framework. And as one of the couples I worked with said, I really like your book, but my wife was not into reading that before bed. So we did the workbook instead together, and I read the book. And that's great. Whatever works for a couple to, like you said, increase their ROI so they just achieve the relationship they want. There's no reason couples can't. We just assume that, again, relationships end up becoming boring or hard or any of those other adjectives, and that is not what has to happen.
Where can the workbook be purchased?
Yeah, both of the books are on Amazon. They're also on my website. And if any of your listeners are interested, they can use the code marriage20 and then get a discount on any purchase around the book or the workbook.
And that's on your website, Marriage20?
The website is drrobinbuckley.com.
But on the website is where they can use Marriage20.
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Amazon, you can't, but website, you can.
Yeah, that's generous. Thank you. If people want to get more of you, how would you like them to do that?
Sure. So website's easy. You can also, there's a contact form there, and you can find me on every blessed social media platform out there, except for X. That's the only one I'm not on. So TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, I'm everywhere.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Stay tuned as John and Rich unpack today's conversation.
John, the easy litmus test of I can't remember when the last time was, and then say anything positive. When's the last time we took a vacation together? When's the last time we had sex? When's the last time we had a kind word with each other? When's the last time we sat down and planned out what we were going to do with the kids this year? When's the last time? Like, name anything positive. If you're saying, I can't remember the last time that what a great litmus test to say, yeah, we should probably talk about that. We should probably do that.
Yeah. Or what you just said is interesting. Like, I do feel like going to your spouse and saying, I can't remember the last time we, almost seems like an attack. Like, it's your fault. Like, why is it? And so one of the things that I encourage people to do is ask themselves the question, I can't remember the last time we, and then try and take some action around it. Try and improve that situation by taking the first step, taking action on improving that point. And then if it doesn't go anywhere, then maybe have a conversation about it. Because I feel a lot of times we restrict ourselves. We don't ask ourselves that question. I thought the question was phenomenal. Really good question. But whatever the answer is, maybe you should think about it and go plan something. And I gave the good example. Amy's been talking about potentially wanting to go do dance classes, like ballroom dancing type of style classes. And then Robin threw out the idea she's going to be doing salsa dancing. She's mentioned it, Rich, no less than maybe half a dozen times in the last couple of years. I've done nothing about it. But in Amy's mind, she's probably asking herself, when was the last time we went dancing?
Yeah.
And she's giving me these cues and I'm not doing anything about it. So I need to hear the cues too. And I think that's part of maybe the double side of it, right? We ask ourselves these questions last time we did something, and we should drop hints, drop clues, try and do something. And you hope the other side receives it. And so we have to have our ears open, I think, a lot in relationships to hear what is being said without it being explicitly said. And that's a good example of one that maybe I'm missing that I think I need to take action. I think I need to go set up a class, go to dinner with her one night, and we're going dancing afterwards. She doesn't even know it, make it a nice little surprise, and that will fill her bucket. And we need to think like that in my mind in relationships to really continue to light that fire.
Which I'm a little surprised on that one because I know you to be a great dancer.
I meant ballroom dancing. I didn't mean like dancing. We've been dancing.
Yeah, it's not that.
No, that we've been doing. It's more of the ballroom two-step thing, trying to figure out how to do that stuff that we've been talking about.
Yeah. How about this idea of identifying with your spouse when the amygdala gets hijacked and when we're about to say something that we're probably going to apologize for later, and identifying that happens, and then installing a break. Her idea I love, which is install a break of a good memory, a word or a couple of words that give a good memory, lower the cortisol, increase the oxytocin. I think Shelby and I do a good job of identifying, hey, I'm about to lose it. I need a break from the conversation before we lose it. What we haven't done, though, is actually created what the protocol is. The only protocol that we have is whoever takes the break, it's their responsibility to reconnect. So if
That's
it was between you and I said, hey, I got to take a break, I'm about to lose it. If it's 2 hours later, you still shouldn't come back to me because I'm still trying to get my house in order over here. It's my job to then come back to you. That's the only thing we have on an SOP or a protocol on the break. I feel like Shelby and I could do a little bit more work on the break, even though we don't use it that often. But when we do, I think it's important to have, so what happens next mapped out.
Yeah, I think you at least have a protocol, and that's a big step because it doesn't have to be overly complicated. You don't need a binder with your SOPs, right? It just needs to be, here's what we're saying we're going to go do. And I love that. I love the fact that you can articulate your protocol for that situation. I think that's fantastic. I do think, though, that's a skill set that goes beyond marriage. It goes to family. It goes to business. It goes to all relationships that you have. When things are getting emotional, before your amygdala just kind of starts firing off, just knowing the science of how the brain works to be like, okay, this is not going to be healthy. Let's all breathe, take some time, and come back to this. Bad decisions get made when the amygdala is firing and things are said that cannot be reversed. So it doesn't matter what situation you're in, whether it be the business situation or the home situation or with your kids, you need to recognize that point. It's a good skill set to teach your kids, quite honestly, how you can pause and come back to a conversation. I think that's really important. I think, Rich, throughout this conversation, what I continued to be thinking about, and she said it in the end, is how do you improve? We're all, what gets measured gets improved. And in a marriage, just like in a business, that's the one thing she was relating a lot to. The whole conversation was business and marriage. You shouldn't treat them differently. How do we measure that? And John Mitchell, one of our former guests, Think It, Be It, would always talk about he said every week, I think. Yeah, he said every week on Sunday night, him and Ginger would touch base and rate each other on how they're doing. And you'd always want to be on the 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 zone, but there would be an honest conversation every week about it. And it's interesting. I found with Amy, I tried to implement that, but wasn't really interested in a weekly rating system.
No, because you kept getting rated a 5 or 6. So
yeah, that's fine. But we've moved to a quarterly. Look, how are we doing here? And I think it's something, a really good thing, just to check in and ask. Because if you're not asking, and I'll give you another example now that I'm saying this out loud. If you asked your spouse or partner to say, hey, how would you fill in this blank? I don't remember the last time what would you say? And asking your spouse that question, just so you can actually learn what's going on. I think we need to be inquisitive. We need to ask the question. We need to see where we're at in the relationship, just like you would with a division of your company or an employee in your business. Where are we at? Let's just check in. I think that element alone is missing in the emotional intelligence of a relationship in most relationships.
I'm drafting off of another podcast guest we had that said to go to your employees and ask, hey, what is it like to work with me as a direct supervisor? Or what is it like to work with me as the owner of the company? And ask for really simple, direct feedback about doing something similar with your spouse. If I went to Shelby and said, hey, what is it like to be married to me? I just don't overthink it. Just start talking. And if you did that with Amy, I don't know. I'd add that in with the idea of getting a rating and then talking about it. Just what has it been like over the last 3 months to be married to me?
Yeah.
How are things going?
Yeah. I just think, Rich, for us and all entrepreneurs and leaders listening to this, the happier you are in the home, the better performing you will be in your business. And I love the way you rank them, right? Self-care is not selfish. Take care of yourself. Then you can take care of your relationships. Your relationships will take care of your kids. All that falls in order. And that will help you perform in your career. It'll help you perform in other things you do in life. So I think it's a really good message for all of us to hear as we enter in 2026 is make sure you have that proper alignment of your priorities. And I can't wait for more of these conversations as we go through the year.
I know I'm going to get that workbook. I think you mentioned you would too. And yeah, thank you to Robin for kicking us off for a great 2026 and focusing on our marriages.